To substitute product on that, you just can't. There's no way to substitute these films that are already made for these certain packages. So the food disruption is not going to be from the food disrupted as it's not grown, which is a fertilizer issue. It's going to be from the plastics packaging side of things first. How are you as a buyer going to change your life because of that disrupted packaging that won't be, like products will just disappear because they won't be able to pack them and ship them. But the packaging to put it in the boxes or shrink wrapped or, Mylar packed, filled bags with inert gases to get you your product on the store, it just won't be available to do that.
Moving on to tonight's program, look around. No wonder you're paying more at the store. You're paying more at the gas pump. This is definitely paranormal, which makes it perfect for us to talk about. All the way from the other side of the world, where it is already Wednesday morning, is David Dubine. He is joining us from the other side of the country. I won't say where he is unless he wants to tell us, but he is on the other side of the country, so he has time traveled literally because it's Tuesday night for me. We've had David on the program many times throughout the years talk about these important subjects that seem to happen in cycles. In fact, his podcast, The Civilization Cycle, and also we know him from Adapt 2030. He has studied the food cycles throughout history and how they affect food production, and he's with us now. Hi, David.
Jeremy, good to be with you again. Thank you for having me on. And I am in Taiwan. Anybody who wants to know, I was in Taipei last week, and now I'm in the southern end of the island down here in the tropical. I see the palm trees, coconut trees, and the rice fields out my window. I'm in a farming area that I choose to live about 2 hours outside Kaohsiung in the farming district, even down here. Why would I do that? Because if you're ever going to move to action, the time is now. Really, there's no BS assessment. This is it. This is the reset we've all been talking about. This is the reason, the excuse they're going to have for restrictions of energy and resetting the economy. So if you're going to move to action, I would highly suggest this is your final go time right now.
So how do you view the situation from down there? Because maybe you're seeing impacts different than we are up here. Or over there, I guess.
I'm seeing the plastic shortages here manifesting before you're going to see them back there. So plastics is the number one thing for food packaging. If we don't have plastics, do you imagine what foods will not be available in our supermarkets or fresh foods or, Mylar bag pack types of things, cookie boxes, anything, it all comes in plastic. Even if it's in a cardboard box when you get it, like a box of cookies, inside there's different films that are wrapping up all these foods that we consume. So you're looking at a plastic shortage out here. They're running the plants at minimal capacity because the naphtha is just, and the methane, there's so many disruptions in what would be needed. The hexane's not here. All these different precursors that are needed for plastics are not here. They're running at minimal capacity to try to stretch the supply. And once that's gone, we're going to be a disrupted plastics world. So the packaging is the biggest thing. Like, put it in your mind. You might have to think about going back to bulk foods because the store-bought products, even wrapping the hamburger, which Jeremy, before the show, you were saying, yeah, it's now an hour's wage. Imagine in the Bible when they talk about a day's wages for a loaf of bread. We're already at the pound of hamburger for an hour's wages. You can't even wrap the hamburger without the plastic.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not good for you. We could talk about the health impacts of that nonetheless, but the fact of the matter is a lot of things are packaged, and there's a connection between, what is it, the petroleum and the plastics?
Yeah, absolutely. You need where does plastic come from? Well, it comes from those different drips out of when you're just distilling a barrel of oil. It's no different than distilling alcohol out when you come off your mash. Different things and different volatiles come off at different temperatures and different pressures, and that's how we made all these tens of thousands of different chemicals. They're just tweaking pressure and temperature, and you're getting all these different substances, and that's how we've done it in the last 50 years, is created all these new products.
The copper supply chain is breaking, and that's a defense problem. Every radar system, power grid, data center, weapons platform, and secure communications network depends on copper. While the mainstream media sleeps, the U.S. government is moving under emergency authorities to lock down domestic supply. And if you understand how modern defense and infrastructure work, you already know where this is heading. The government just issued a direct order, immediate measures to increase American mineral production. They specifically named the Palmer Project in Alaska as a priority. This isn't wishful thinking, it's a White House directive. Vizsla Copper owns 100% of the Palmer Project, an asset believed to host in-ground value in the billions of copper, zinc, and critical minerals. The government is signing, we need domestic supply, and we need it now. Vizsla Copper acquired Palmer last year when I first featured them, and since then the story has only strengthened. Now they have the full backing of the Alaskan governor, and with Trump announcing a proposed $12 billion U.S. strategic critical mineral reserve, the timing couldn't be better. Backed by the same team that built Vizsla Silver into a billion-dollar company, they're not guessing, they're executing. They control millions of pounds of copper at their flagship property, and now they've positioned directly inside America's critical minerals strategy. When the government names your project a solution, that's not luck, that's positioning. Here's what matters. Owning physical, government-backed domestic mineral supply is one of the most direct ways to prepare for what's coming. When supply chains tighten, and they will, the assets sitting in the ground with government backing are what hold value. Other Alaskan projects with this level of support moved over 200%. Vizsla Copper trades under the ticker VCUFF in the US and VCU.V in Canada, and is now the focal point of America's copper solution. Do your own research. Thanks to Vizsla Copper Corp for sponsoring today's video. You can get their latest presentation here on their website, VizslaInvestorDeck.com/ADAPT2030. Vizsla Copper Corp. Check out the possibilities. That's Vizsla-investor-deck.com/ADAPT2030. Click on that link in the description box below.
And one of them is plastic, and it's called naphtha. So anybody out there that just wants to game it out like a really easy one, naphtha disruption equals plastics disruption, and everything else off of that, and the different hexane and different products things. Big thing that all plastic precursors are made and come from is this part of the barrel of oil called naphtha. Everything else is cracked off of that. Everything else moves from that. So just naphtha equals plastic. That's all disrupted. You can read miles of headlines of naphtha being disrupted across, and it's coming to Asia. And Asia is your main manufacturing point. So it's hitting here first. It's going to hit these bigger countries in the West next. But just like it was with COVID, it started here first. Oh, nothing's going to happen. And then whoosh, we got steamrolled. So expect the same steamrolling of plastic shortages. Now, how are companies going to deal with that? How are you as a buyer going to change your life because of that disrupted packaging that won't be, like products will just disappear because they won't be able to pack them and ship them. This is another thing, adjusting your diet based on disruptions, just based on not the food shortage itself. There's plenty of food. But the packaging to put it in the boxes or shrink wrapped or, Mylar packed, filled bags with inert gases to get your product on the store, it just won't be available to do that. So you can't rethink a package in like a week and then put it out. This is like a multi-year process, these companies that repack.
Does the packaging go through testing?
It does, but if they're going to retool a pack, it's going to take years to do that. They have to retool their entire lines to fit a new package. That's why, remember Tyson Chicken a few years ago? This was probably like 5 years ago. There was a strike and the employees were not working in Tyson, and the chickens grew past a certain date. So they didn't fit the pre-conformed molds of when a chicken reaches a certain size. Those packages are already made for that chicken to slide into that pack. So they went past it by a few days, and the chickens were too large to slide into the package sleeves, or those plastic sleeves. And they had to, sell hundreds of millions of chickens because they went past their size date. So the same thing, they're all tooled together. The amount of cookie. Now think about cookies, for example. Those cookies are a certain size, and they're put into different harder sleeves. And then on top of that, there's a light film, and then it's either in a package, a package itself of plastic, or it's in a box. But to substitute product on that, you just can't. There's no way to substitute these films that are already made for these certain packages. So the food disruption is not going to be from the food disrupted as it's not grown, which is a fertilizer issue. it's going to be from the plastics packaging side of things first. I would just say take an inventory of what plastics are around your house and your food packaging, because those will be disappearing first. Then we could go right on to the fish. Like the fish, if you buy fish, we're going to have a fish shortage, fish off the plate. There's levels of this that our news in America is not talking about, but I'm living out here in Asia, knowing this is coming to you last thing that COVID did. It started here, and then the repercussions swept around the world. Well, I'm telling you, I'm showing you and trying to reiterate what is hitting here first right now. Plastic shortages and fish off the plate. Like the diesel, these fish fleets aren't going out anymore to get the fish. It's just not cost effective. And the fish food's raising for the farm to raise fish too, so that's driving costs. They're raising prices every week out here for your food, or at least my food. We're going to start to do the same thing back in America too. The food is going to be repriced weekly. Again, put that in your head. The inflation coming in on a weekly price increase. Are you ready for that?
Right, because it's coming in on a truck, and the price of the fuel maybe is going to be going up or down, around $5 on average in some places right now in the States, and I know it's higher places and lower other places. That's just how it works. But then those costs will get passed on, and so the weekly thing, is a real issue that the consumer is going to have to decide, how much, what's the breaking point, basically.
I guess your budget is. And we've seen this through history routinely, that we're into this cycle of government's going to have to provide assistance to people in some way or form, because just the daily cost of life that's going to continue to rise up. If your fuel's going up, your electricity is going up because natural gas is going up. It's on a global market. Even though we produce heaps of energy and refine it in America, it's a global market. So, and then we start to think about the fertilizer disruptions and what's that going to do with ethanol production to put into your tank also with these different blends of E10, E15. And I'm seeing more and more stories in America of people going, hey, wait, my tank's not getting as many miles as it used to, because they're sneaky putting in more ethanol into the blends in America above. If you're buying E10, you're really probably buying something like E15. If you're buying E15, you're way at E20, E20. At some point, just pure blend, those ethanol would get to the engine destroying part, where there's going to be a cap on how much ethanol they can put into your fuel, but there's also a cap on how much cellulose they can put into your food before it starts to affect the body. The same thing, there's only so much ethanol they can sneakily put into the fuel supply to try to stretch it. And we're coming into it's a multi-layered thing here on what your budget's going to allow you to do. So I would just say, start to prepare for these changes, and don't get super angry with the changes. Just understand the changes. You're going to have to roll with them. You're going to have to adapt to them. And I think the big winners on this are going to be the ones that aren't going to hold on to the past, and they're going to just tweak and go straight to the new. So if your food's only available in the new shipments on Tuesdays, great. Don't complain about it. Just readjust your life. All right, we need to get ready for Tuesday for maximum motion. Please understand, all research and all data points out here on just the resumption of NAFTA to produce plastics in Asia would take 6 to 9 months to smooth that out before we're back to the world we were before this Iran disruption. 6 to 9 months. This 2-week thing is giving everybody a false sense of, hey, it's going to go back to normal. Where did we hear that before? It's going to go, we're going back to normal. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I kid you not, they're using the same playbook. 2-week ceasefire. It's going to go back to normal. The ships are coming out. Please, everybody, understand this disruption is going to reverberate for a half a year at the minimum, more in some other areas, 9 months. So I would just put that as a talking point or a data point for people listening.
Well, in government assistance, we can't come to rely on that. I mean, look what happened just a few months ago, right around the holidays, when people were scrounging because of the shutdown.
Yeah, now imagine that if truly the food isn't there, or the plastics aren't there, and the amount of food choices bring you back down to, bulk. And imagine if you have to bring your own bags, because all they can do is bring in, 2-ton sacks, and you have to scoop it out like they do in many developing nation. Go to India, go to any nation where they actually sell bulk, and they'll bring in 100-pound bags, and the vendor just scoops straight out of that, and then it goes into somebody else's bag as it comes off the scale. Think about, as an American, the disruption in that, and the retooling of your mind to even accept that you can buy bulk. The food's still going to be there. But the way you purchase it and the way you have to change and spend more time cooking at home, I mean, the things are so convenient for us. So almost no brainer to get your food. But in the predominant amount of the world, everybody cooks from bulk, from scratch, for a better term, like we did with our grandparents. It's going to take you hours to cook at home, not 5 minutes. Just even the very way that you prepare food, the amount of time to prepare it, you're going to have to budget extra time in your day. And again, the lifestyle changes with this are going to swing greatly on the pendulum of we're moving back into an older lifestyle. We're going to definitely be moving the clock back in terms of convenience.
Back to the COVID era?
Even further back, I'm talking my grandparents' era when, they spent time to go out to get in the stores. And if we do get into some sort of rationing where the government will provide you with food and they will provide, digital rationing cards, and you're going to still need to spend more time standing in line to get in the store to get that product, whatever it is. And then you're going to have to take it home in a bulk form and then cook it. So you're going to have 2 extra layers of time eroded from your daily life. The cooking time, now hopefully you can do other things like listen to our conversation in a podcast, Jeremy and I, while you're cooking your dinner. Spend the hour. You can listen to podcasts while you're preparing your food. Use that time wisely. But at the same time, if you're stuck in line for 2 or 3 hours waiting to get into the store to get your bulk product, I don't know. I don't have a solution for how you're going to use time right then. But we're going to have extra increments of time eroded from your day, devoted and moved over to other tasks that we are not even prepared for mentally for most people.
The people who exclusively order online, because maybe they can't leave their home or they don't want to leave their home, now they're not seeing what they usually get online, and they may be having to venture out in order to, fend for themselves. So there's going to be issues with, people should expect perhaps, while there wouldn't be overall shortages, at least not yet here at the grocery store, maybe there will be less varieties, or maybe from time to time certain things won't be available. Would that be reasonable to assume?
Yeah, that would be definitely reasonable, and it'll be seasonal as well. So, again, drop back into your grandparents' era. They ate a much more seasonal diet than we do. Because all those things that you are getting, and myself too, out of season, those are delivered using fuel. The last mile is getting that truck from that ship at that port and that rail line to your store. So think about even the change in diet over a seasonal variation. And for you to just put it in your mind that you're going to order online and you're going to go, wait in that parking spot in Walmart or wherever you're picking it up, Kroger, Costco, and you're just going to drive every day like you do now to go get that. If we're in that sort of disruption, then your ability to procure fuels to go on those weekly, let's get over to Costco and have them load the trunk kind of things, that's going to be, I would say, semi-disrupted as well. If we're at that point where we're at a bulk food buy because the plastics have been so disrupted that our food choices change, your ability to have fuel is going to be greatly restricted as well. So that's all going to come in one giant package. So, the way of life that you think on, I'm just going to order and go pick it up. That will be also, you need to change it. Maybe you can go once every 2 weeks. Maybe families all buy together and they just send one car and they pick it up. Or maybe a new delivery business starts where they'll bring tons, literally a ton of food back to your neighborhood, and 50 families had ordered together, and they're only going to do it that way. Something is definitely going to change, but there's a lot of opportunity in this change too. Don't look at it in a fear-based. Change is good for a lot of things. There's so many opportunities in change. Don't get stuck in the old world. That is the biggest key to survival, is don't get stuck and not be able to pivot. If you're a pivotless person, I'm sorry, you're not going to survive. You're going to need to pivot on a daily, on a weekly, and a monthly moving forward. So just accept it.
It may start with just your Amazon fresh delivery or whatever, and I'm not paid to say that. May not be available to arrive later today or even tomorrow. Talking with David Devine tonight, civilizationcycle.com, his website. So in Asia, we've been seeing the plastics shortage, which is impacting packaging. And not that it's good for you anyway, but, and then the fish, as you were saying, Dave. So what people may not be able to find the high end stuff and maybe going for, having to find different kinds of fish or no fish at all, depending?
Well, it depends. There's a loop of inflation in the fish price coming for everybody. And just to frame this, so far there's 7 nations that have curtailed or totally stopped their fishing fleet from going out. So even in the United States, our Gulf shrimping fleet is running at a percentage of capacity. So if you like shrimp, you're going to see almost an instant rise in the next 2 weeks of shrimp prices. Now, we do have farm-raised shrimp, so that is going to be the next backstop for that inflationary push. But the input for that, as in the feed, is also going up in price. So whatever way you're looking at it, you're just going to be paying more for ocean or farm-raised proteins. Now, in the Guernsey Islands in England, their fishing fleet is about 50% right now. The Dutch fishing fleet is pretty much all locked in because their fuel costs, get this, went from 13,000 euros to 36,000 euros in a week. That's almost a tripling in price. So almost all of their fishing fleet is staying in port. Thailand, half of their fishing fleet is not going out due to the cost. Here in Taiwan, I'm here so I can talk about this because we talked to a fish wholesaler, a couple of them actually yesterday, about the prices of milkfish, which is a preferred ocean catch, but they do have farm raised, but they don't get the same fat content as the ocean variety. So that's going up. So the exchange rate in Taiwan currently is 30 NT to $1. So the price for a pound of that is 50 NT, but then it went to 60, 70, 80, and this week it'll be 90 NT for the same fish from last month. The fishing fleet in Taiwan is not going out as far. Now, they could get extra fish that are between 1 and, say, 6 inches, 4 inches longer, but for them, the cost benefit is not. They're going to run closer to shore to save fuel and come back in with fish. The size of the fish you're going to start to purchase is going to be really small, too. They're not willing to go out with the much further out with the ocean trawlers. Now, I don't have any information on that if they're going to continue their fishing. I'm talking about daily or weekly that they leave from a port on land, and then they go out and they come back within like 7 days. But the ones that stay out for 2-3 months, those factory ships, I don't have any information on that currently. Bangladesh, totally blocked in. So they're already having food shortages over there. India as well, they're really curtailing because the diesel prices have run away to shortage levels there. So their fishing fleet's not going out. You start to look at this around the world and the amount of fish that's going to be available. If you really have that as one of the staples in your life, that's going to get pushed in price and also the availability for that. And then you wrap in, because most of those are literally wrapped in plastic when they're delivered. The cuttlefish, the squids, this sort of thing, those are more larger ocean trawlers that go out. But a huge amount of local, if it's coming in and out and you're getting it from a local market or a supermarket that, some of the like Asian supermarkets, Korean supermarket, whatever, they get a lot more local types of fish. What I'm trying to say is fish is going off the plate at the moment. So again, if that's one of your protein sources because you don't like to eat meat, you're going to have to prepare for that because that's going to get much more expensive and less available. And perhaps there's a workaround for that in your local area. I would highly advise look for that immediately to try to have that same supply coming in or find a substitute for it. Because, I got a pond at my place on my farm. And I don't mind if the Amish live close to me. So I love when the Amish kids come down and go fishing. Some people will knock on the door occasionally and they'll be like, hey, can I fish in your pond? And if they look like scrubs, I'll tell them no. But if it's just a bunch of kids, they're like, yeah, go have fun. Local fishing in your local pond, do you know people who will allow you to do that? As in, would a neighbor let you fish in their pond? Right now, yes, but if it does get squirrely on the protein sources, maybe they won't. They'll be like, no, forbidden fishing, or you'll have to pay to go in and fish.
Be worried about them contaminating it.
Yeah. The contamination, and too, people can get fish from anywhere. Like, for example, in the TVA, which is the Tennessee Valley Authority, earlier in the 1950s or whatever, they would just dump the PCBs from the generators straight into the water. And there's areas everywhere that the signs are still up, like, do not consume fish from this area. It is highly, highly polluted with forever chemicals there. Those PCBs are still all in the water. But in a pinch, people are going to start getting that fish because they're really going to have no other choice. And again, if you're just going to buy fish, you're really going to want to know where it comes from, because if some dude's selling some fish on the side of the road, like, where's that fish coming from? Is it one of those chemical dump areas where they're forbidden fishing, or they're like, pregnant women don't eat it, you shouldn't have it more than like once a year? I mean, you're really going to have to be discerning on your choices if you're going to start buying local fish. You're really going to need to know where that comes from.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be more scarce. In fact, there was a story out of Oregon with diesel prices jumping more than $1.50 in a month. Fishermen saying that this is not sustainable. So, I mean, you said it's already happening in Asia. Maybe we're about to reach the breaking point over here in parts of the United States.
Yeah, it's all dependent on the diesel cost, because people are not going to go out and work for a loss. That would be insanity, to spend all your time, energy, and then you come back and know you'll lose money before you go out. That is the very same thing with our farmers this year. A lot of them, with the current cost of fertilizer, almost 50% up, in some places even higher, 70% up, and the fuel costs going up. But the government subsidies aren't there to cover those cost increases. There's a heap of farmers out there. We're looking at about a minimum 10 million acres so far of pledged. I'm not planting. I'm going to lose money already. So again, the government's going to have to step in here and start to pick up some of these costs to allow food to continue to be produced, because we're at that chicken and egg thing here with the corn for the ethanol and the corn for the animal feed. They call it like an animal feed wall. They call it like the livestock wall. If there's not enough feed for the cows and chickens and this sort of thing, that's grown because of the fertilizers. And if they're not going to do it because of fertilizer and diesel increases, then again, we get into this feedback loop. Already 10 million acres. I know that's only a percentage of American production. We got 300 million acres. But so far, at least 10 million of those are not being planted this year. And I'm sure it's going to be higher as these guys try to work in their costs, because as a farmer, would you go spend all your days and all your nights to produce food knowing in the beginning you're going to lose $1 a bushel or something?
No,
would you do that?
You'd quit your job and go work for someone else.
Yeah, of course. You got to realize these farmers and the fishermen and these types of industries, it could be lumber, it could be anything. If they know in the beginning they're going to accrue a loss on that, then they're not going to go to work. You're right. They would go for somebody else that would pay them so they have income, because their prices are increasing in their lives as well. Do you think just because you're a farmer that whatever you're buying is going to be cheaper just because you're a farmer? Of course not. They pay the same cost as we do when they go to the supermarkets to get things they can't produce.
They've got to buy the products to support themselves just like we do. And just because these things may be more expensive at the store, that doesn't necessarily mean that the farmer is getting any more money for this, right? David Dubine, our guest.
Yeah, it's not. And if I could address the elephant in the room on all of this, we're coming to the end of the decade, and we've heard about these end of the decade goals. A lot of those were trying to be achieved at maximum from 2020 during the COVID era. Not all of them were achieved because there was a lot of pushback. But as you see, this is such a convenient excuse to drag everybody else across the finish line for 2030. This energy disruption provides check the box. You will drive less, you'll have less air flights, you will consume less proteins. That was the end of the decade goal. And this achieves all of those in one fell swoop. You will consume less purely, and you will consume less. You'll be relegated to 3 changes of clothes per year, and your lifestyle is going to radically change. If anybody had looked into these goals for the end of the decade, this disruption in what we have for petrochemicals as well as energy checks probably 50 of those boxes right away. If you look in, they have bigger goals about protecting the environment and, air travel and these things, pollution. But when you get into the nitty gritty, those break down into subsets of tens of tens of tens. You could check off 50 of those just right away with the oil being here. But another one is the reset of the economy. That whole famous phrase, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, at this point, if these prices keep rising by the week or by the month, and keep in mind, even though the strait might be open, just the disruption and of the flows of normal commerce and energy is going to take 6 to 9 months of that bottleneck anyway to smooth itself out. So this is a false sense of security that Everybody's walking on a hair trigger here because nobody trusts anybody's word anymore. Diplomacy is dead on this planet. It no longer exists. It's purely lies to buy time to rearm. So take that as like a subset of information. But the resetting of the economy was another major goal by the end of 2030 or the beginning of the end of this decade. But how do you achieve that? You can't have two parallel economy systems running at the same time. You can't have a US dollar-based system and then a full-on digital, stable coin, on-demand liquidity system running at the same time with instant settlements with something clunky that takes 3 days to clear off the Fed now. These two cannot exist. It's like Highlander. There can be only one. But how in the real world could you achieve that switchover? Because there were so many protests, so you couldn't really do it without any other gargantuan crisis than disrupting the world's energy and petrochemical supply. It's the only way. So again, if you're gonna, if you're a strategist, you're gonna see how long do you need to close something before you achieve the objective? How long does it need to stay closed or disrupted enough to get us to the new economy? Because on 30,000 foot view looking over the Middle East, there's been so much infrastructure destroyed, and that will take 5 to 10 years to rebuild. There's not even the straits are open. There's been so much damage done there. Now walk this forward 3 or 2 or 3 or 4 years to the point where it's unaffordable for anybody to live because packaging is restricted, your food diet, all these things. Like you can game this out 15 ways from Sunday on the way inflation is going to start running every month. We're not going to measure inflation on a yearly basis anymore. We're going to start measuring it in weeks or months on a recalculation. So at some point, you're not going to be able to, or at least if you haven't prepared, and I love the way, so you were talking to, some of your advertisers to have silver on here, because that is a great way, having precious metals, having land, being able to grow food, these sort of things are time immemorial ways to survive this. And a lot of people aren't prepared like that. And they're going to be the ones that are going to be in the breadlines and relying on government assistance. But if you get, over a certain percentage, the entire society will shift into that new system. This is the perfect way to do it. And I can't believe more people aren't calling this out for what it is, the elephant in the room. This is the final reset to bring us into the achieved end of the decade goals. You will own nothing because the wealth will be transferred away from you through inflation never ending. And at the same time, the government assistance law, you're going to have to ask the government for help. If it gets to the point where food is rising by the week or by the month in price, most people can't afford that. And you will be begging for the handout. You'll be begging for the universal basic income. You'll be begging for the digital ID to get your rations out of the store, which you can pay for free with the universal basic income. So it really doesn't affect your life. Yeah, you need to wait in line. You need to cook differently. But that whole mechanism to snap that in so people will accept it has already been put in play. It's in play right now. So again, you can protect yourselves the best you can. And I really hope people take a little bit of advanced warning out of this talk today. So Jeremy, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you letting me, explain what was happening out here in Asia, because it is going to hit. It is definitely going to hit back in the States, but it's just going to be a little bit of delay from here to there. And the reset's already baked in the cake.
So part of the whole reset and your channel, Adapt 2030, so it's the 2030 timeline.
It is, because we would have to adjust or adapt our food growing strategies before then, just based on natural magnetic field declines that are pushing our jet streams into different areas. And, one thing that I'd really been questioning about this, are we at that rollover point where natural variability in the magnetic field is going to disrupt crop production enough where we would notice it and start asking questions like, why are our crops down 20% when there's no disruption in the world? Or have they facilitated this at the exact same time to create the disruption to cover for the crop losses on a natural variability timeline of multi-thousand-year cycle?